Alright, good morning you guys. Today we are starting lesson 8.5, which is the coordinate grid. And we have already talked about a coordinate plane before. We've graphed points before using ordered pairs, but today the coordinate plane, the grid, is going to be expanded now to include negative numbers. So before we only plotted positive numbers. So if you look at the vocabulary, there's an example of what I mean. But the first thing that says, previously you plotted points with positive coordinates, now you will plot points with positive and negative coordinates. A coordinate plane, which is this whole graph, is formed by the intersection of a horizontal number line, which means that there's a number line going straight across with 0 in the middle, and a vertical number line, which means there's also a number line going up and down. And the number lines intersect at what is called the origin, which with ordered pairs is marked as 0, 0. So at the point of intersection, that's called the origin. And then each of the 4 spaces that the coordinate plane is now cut into, each of those are called quadrants. And you guys are probably going to have to just memorize this, but the quadrants are numbered 1 through 4, and they go counterclockwise. So this is quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4, and they're always written with Roman numerals. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the origin is in the middle. We call the horizontal number line the x-axis. You should probably already know that. And then the y-axis is the one going up and down. And then the points that we're talking about are called ordered pairs. And the first number that's listed represents the number on the x-axis. That's the x-coordinate. The second number is the y-coordinate, which is the number on the y-axis. So if you go down a little bit to the first couple of examples, it says which ordered pair corresponds to point T, and it gives you 4 different choices. So if you look at the graph, if you remember when we talk about ordered pairs, the x-axis or the x-coordinate always comes first. So to label a point, you always go, you always go over and then either up or down. So if you are trying to find point T right here, we first had to go over 3 spaces, and then we went down to -3. So the point that we're looking for is letter C, 3, -3. That's the ordered pair. And so for the other ones, the try-it questions, it says use the graph in example 1 to write an ordered pair corresponding to the point. So the first one, point P, go over first. Point P is over at -3. So the first number is -3. And you go up, or we went up 3. This is where you guys can pause to try these on your own and then come back and check. Q, point Q, we went over to -2, and we did not go up at all, so we would represent that with a 0. Point R, we went over -1 and down to -4. And then the last one, I'll do an orange, point S. We did not go over at all. We stayed at the origin, which is 0. And we went up 2 spots. So that is identifying an ordered pair. The next thing I think we are going to do is now kind of reverse that, and we are going to plot ordered pairs. And when it says describe the location of the ordered pair, that just means to then tell me which quadrant it falls in. So -2, 3 means go over to -2 on the graph, and then since it's positive, you go up 3 places. We put a dot right there, and this falls in quadrant number 2. Remember, they go 1, 2, 3, and then IV means 4. Okay. Plot 0, -3.5. So 0 is the x-coordinate. We have not moved at all from the 0 and then down to 3.5, which is right here. And that is not in a quadrant, actually. That is sitting right on the y-axis. So if one of your points is sitting on the line, it's either on the x or the y-axis. Okay, so you go do the try it ones, and then don't forget to describe the location of the point. Okay, so I'm going to say that I'm going to do this in purple. 3, -1. So over 3 down to -1 is right here. That is point A. That is in quadrant 4. And so you can also abbreviate by putting Q4. Letter B, I'll do in blue, -5, and then up 0. So that's not in a quadrant, it is sitting right on the x-axis. Letter C, -2.5, is right in between 2 and 3, and then up -1, that is in quadrant 2. Then the last one, letter D, -1.5, in between 1 and 2, and then up half as well would be about right there, and that is also in quadrant 2. Okay, that is example number 2. So this is just the basic plotting and identifying ordered pairs, which most of this should be a review. The only thing we're adding is now the other half of the number line, the negative numbers. So the next thing that we're going to try is called reflecting. And so it's kind of like in science, if you talk about reflecting, like think about a mirror. You're going to take one point. There's an explanation in words up here where it says key idea, but this is just kind of what it means. It says reflect -2, 4 on the x-axis. So start with your regular point, -2, 4. So I'm going to put a dot there, -2 up to 4. And then reflect in the x-axis means that you're going to pretend that the x-axis, this line right here, is like a mirror, and you're reflecting the original point onto the other side as if it were a mirror image. And so it would stay on the -2 line, but instead of +4, it's now at -4. And so the new point that you're talking about is -2, -4. And so if you read the directions up here, it says to reflect a point in the x-axis, use the same x coordinate. So we stayed at -2. and then take the opposite y coordinate. So the opposite of 4 was -4. And so now we'll try in the y-axis, -3, -1. I'm going to do this one in blue, -3, which is here, and then down to -1. And this time it says the y-axis is going to act as the mirror. So if you think of the blue line now as a mirror, and it's reflecting to the other side, it's staying on -3, but it will, it's staying on the -1 line right here, but it will be on +3 now. And so your new point would be sorry, 3, -1. So this says to reflect a point in the y-axis, use the same y coordinate, take the opposite x coordinate. So the same y would be -1, -1, negative, and then the opposite y coordinate, opposite of -3 is +3. Okay, so you guys, I made you a little table down here, but basically it's asking you to reflect twice now. So for number 9, number 10, number 11, we're going to do it 2 different times. So number 9, I'll do in purple. 3, -2 is the original point. So start at 3, -2, right there. So first, if we do the x-axis, that's the horizontal. I don't really want to mark it, but the horizontal number line. And so if the x-axis is a mirror, the dot will stay. Oh my. Will stay on 3, but instead of -2, it'll flip up to +2. So your new point would be 3, 2. And then if you go back to the original point down here of 3, -2, and you reflect it on the y-axis, it will travel across this way, and you'll be at -3, -2. And then you're going to do the same thing for number 10 and number 11. So 4, 0 would be, I'm going to do this one in blue, go over to 4, and then up 0. So first, since it says reflect on the x-axis, it's already sitting on the x-axis, and so it can't really reflect. So this one would just stay the same. But the next one, when we reflect on the y-axis, so use the y-axis, the number line, the vertical number line. If you reflected over that, instead of +4, it would be at -4, but it would not go up. So your new point would be -4, 0. The last one, number 11, I'll do in green, -5, 1.5, -5, up 1.5 is between 1 and 2, right here. First, if I reflected over the x-axis, that is the horizontal number line, it would go down into quadrant 3. It would be right here. So it would be -5, -1.5. And then the next one going across the vertical y-axis, it would stay at the 1.5 mark, but it would now be +5. So it would look like that. So that is reflecting once. Example 4 now is reflecting, it says reflecting a point in both axes. So that means we're going to do 2 different reflections. It's the same thing we just did basically. So the first one, reflect 2, comma 1. So first, mark that 2 and 1. It's right here. So this is the original. You don't have to write that. I'm just doing that for you. And then it says first in the x-axis. So first, if this were to move across the x-axis, which is this line, it would go down to -1. That's the first reflection. That's not the final answer because then it says followed by the y-axis. So now if we reflect it on the y-axis, take the blue point, the first reflection, and reflect it over the green y-axis. So we are now staying at -1, but we are at -2. And so the final point, this final reflection point, your new point would be -2, comma, -1. Okay, so you guys do the try it problem, see if you can do 2 reflections at once. I'm going to do A and B on one coordinate plane and C and D on the other one. Okay, so number 12 for 3, comma 2, it would be 3, comma 2 would be right here. So that's the first point. And then it says again the x-axis first, followed by the y-axis. So I'm going to label, this is point number 1. If I reflect it over the x-axis, it would now be at 3, -2. Now if I reflect it over the y-axis, it would be right here. So my final answer would be -3, comma, -2. Now I'm going to do the same thing for letter B. The first one, -1, comma 2, oh my goodness, would be here. And then first on the x-axis, so I'm going down now. So this was the first point. I did my first reflection here. And now I'm going to my last reflection over the y-axis, so flip it across the y-axis. It'll be right here. And if you look, that is over 1, down 2 places, so it would be -2. Okay. Letter C, -4, -3. Here's -4. Here's -3. So this is point 1. First across the x-axis, which means it will reflect up. So it's going to stay on the -4 line, but going up to +3, which is here. So you should notice that the numbers themselves stay the same. It's the positive and the negatives that are changing. And then over the y-axis would be staying on 3, but now I'm at +4. And so this one would be 4, 3. And then the last one, 5, -2.5, which would be here. -2.5 is in between -2 and -3. So this would be 1. If I first go over the x-axis, I would be going up, so stay on the 5 line, up to 2.5. And then across the y-axis, now going across, you're staying on 2.5, but you're at -2. 5 now, and so the final point would be -5, 2.5. Okay, so those are reflections. Just make sure that you're reading the directions, going across the correct axis. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to be graphing like a kind of like a real life situation. So this says a blizzard hits a town at midnight. The table shows the hourly temperatures from midnight to 8 a.m. Display the data in a line graph and then describe the change in temperature over time. And so if you look at the table, it tells you right away X and Y. And so you can change these numbers to graph them. You can turn them into ordered pairs. And so, like the first one, 0 hours after midnight, the temperature's 7 degrees. It would look like that. And then the second one would be 1,5, 2,3, and I know that because it's telling me the x coordinates are the ones on the top, the hours, the temperatures are the y coordinates. 3, 0, 4, -1. And then when you're finished finding your ordered pairs, you're going to put them on the graph. And so 0, 7 be there. 1, 5, 2, 3, 3, 0, 5, -4, 6, -5. Oh, darn, my graph isn't big enough. Then I have to make my graph a little bit bigger. Here's 8, and 2 would be right here. And so it tells me to make a line graph, so now I'm going to connect my dots. And since this is not, like the change isn't consistent, the line will not be straight. And so when I ask you to describe the temperature over time, you guys are going to have to put into words now what you see happening on the graph. So I would say that maybe the temperatures, what is going on? The temperatures first decrease hours after midnight. So it went down until what here? No, that's not right, sorry. They decrease until here. So that means 6 hours after midnight, which is 6 o'clock then. From oh, I skipped a number. That's why my graph doesn't make sense. So I forgot 7 and -2. Okay, anyway, from midnight to 6, and then increase. From 6 to 8 a.m. And so the description is just me reading my graph. You guys try numbers, or I guess the next one is not numbered. It says the table shows the elevations of a submarine hour from noon to 5. Display the data in a line graph. So first make your ordered pairs. Again, it tells you which ones are X, which ones are Y. So your points are going to be this. Okay, so then just go ahead and plot your points real quick. 0, 4.5, 1, 3. Okay, so again, will not be a really straight line because the change is not consistent. And so we are talking about elevation now. So you could say something like the elevation increased from noon, because that's when it starts. And you can see it going up until you reach the 3, which is 3 o'clock. And then decreases from 3 to 5. Okay. Anyway, you guys, that is lesson 8.5. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.